Hi everyone, I'm Rob Hawkes.
I'm Chris Blackburn.
And as you know, we run Training Tuesdays every week, 4:30. At the moment though, with the coronavirus pandemic hitting the country and the world, we're going to be running Training Tuesdays remotely. Isn't that right, Chris?
That's correct. So everybody stay safe. We will still be ensuring that the training happens on a weekly basis, but we will be working remotely through that process too.
Excellent. Thank you. Focus on the training. So in a word, testing those of you who've been watching this series, put in the chat your favorite tool of the SWISH tools of influence. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, you're going to have no idea what we're talking about. But yeah, put your favorite tool inside of the chat. And Chris, I think because I've got the participant thing, so you might want to read the chat out. I can't see it.
Beautiful. That's no problem. I'll read the chat out. That's no problem. We'll give 60 seconds to sort of run through that as well. Bear with me. As we're going through teething problems, Rob, you will have to look at the chat as well.
Okay, I'll just move this and do that. Okay, so we've got personalization from April. And Lauren on Facebook has said scarcity. It's my favorite city. I made that joke earlier. I'm just going to admit something else. So while we're getting the rest of everybody's, remember there are 7 tools of influence. So we've got customization, personalization, customization, scarcity. We've got likability, reciprocity, advancing. So feel free to, wrong tool, April has said. Chris, what about yours, mate? What's help people out? What's your favorite tool of influence?
Yeah, I think great question, Rob. I think for me would be advancing. Probably the reason for that, I always like to sort of paint pictures and get an idea of what the product and service, depending on what industry we're assisting, what that can actually do for a customer as well. So I think we'll obviously go into the tools shortly, but looking how to paint the picture and advance a customer past the point of sale is probably mine.
Yeah, okay.
How about yourself?
My favorite is reciprocity. I've been known to be called in the office Reciprocity Rob. I just think holding people accountable to what they said they were going to do for me is the for me it's the best tool. I think you're keeping people accountable what they've said they're going to do. It's a really great way to build rapport by asking reciprocity based questions, answering your own question before you ask it. Mm-hmm. So for me, that would be why. And we've got a few more here. We've got Mandy, hard one to pick. I love advancing. I do it in a lot of areas of my life. Mm-hmm. So again, for those of you who haven't been watching the last 7 weeks, there are different tools that we believe really form the SWISH methodology. Chris, why is advancing your favorite? Why would you say it's your favorite?
I think, again, just going back to understanding that, putting the customers past the point of sale is why I love that. I think advancing somebody into future states and giving them really an example of what that could actually look like for them. I believe that it increases value in product yourself and the company that you work for as well. If you know that people have already been through a same or similar problem, hurdle, challenge, results, things like that, you can really start to paint pictures through third-party stories by advancing past the point of sale too.
Yeah. In this crazy world that we're living in right now, it's the only way that I can describe it, for want of a better phrase. We've got people that are in lots of different industries that are still kicking goals. They're still trying to survive. Well, we've got Gulf Western. Hey, Chris, and we've got team. We've got Tony in hospitality training. They're doing some great stuff with COVID-19 training. We've got real estate. How would you advise people to use advancing in this situation right now? It's your favorite tool. So how would you encourage people to use that tool?
I believe that one area that's been very, very important for me over these last 2 weeks, obviously, is challenging times. We've not really been through that. I think sort of going into your existing network is very much how I've looked to do that. So sort of going into network and finding referral partners and getting people to sort of advance with the results that they've got and help more people coming through, if that makes sense. So I think looking to utilize your existing network, if people can take practicals away from that, how can you go into your existing network, not to sell, you know, we don't teach people how to sell, we become assisted buyers. So how do you get into your existing network, leverage off the back of that and obtain more clients, or even just give more value over the next few weeks as well?
Yeah, right. I just returned a message on Andy Milne on Facebook saying I'm still smashing it out in the flooring industry, which is great. Great to see you back here, Andy. I think with advancing, Chris, do you feel like we can advance people beyond COVID? Like we could take people 6 months from now, a year from now. But I mean, how would you do that? I mean, you've been making sales this week. So how have you been able to sort of maybe advance people? Have you been advancing people beyond beyond 6 months? Or, we don't know how this is going to last.
Yeah, I'm not too sure if Alex has come in here so far yet, but if he has, welcome. He's a very exciting individual based out of Melbourne today that I brought onto our academy program as well. So really what he was looking for was in 6 months' time to start developing his business model as well. So the way that we was able to do that, and again, very ethically and very honestly, because he's excited to jump into the journey as well, I basically shared with him, so the tools that you're going to learn over these next 3 to 6 months, how, and I guess more importantly, why is that going to be important for you in 6 months' time? So there's two ways we can look at COVID. We can jump into fear, or we can see this as an opportunity and a change of business. Now, everybody's going to be on a very even keel when it becomes business and sales, obviously. So yeah. How are we going to use these tools that we're educating? Because I've been doing it for 15 years, so it's not an overnight sort of process. So how are we going to use this over the next 3 to 6 months? So in 6 months' time, when your business starts, you're not behind the 8 ball and you're very proactive in that. Yeah. So sort of language and questioning around that. Then obviously Alex, and if he is in here today, will be explaining that's the reason that he's joined today and not in 6 months' time.
Yeah, it's good, really good. I think we can all take from that. I think depending on the service and depending on what we do, but we've got a question here. Sorry, beginning the midst of the conversation. Nurturing is a tool to advance. I tell you what, we did that on purpose because we wanted to test what people had retained. So if you can all grab a pen. Or a device, if you're listening to this externally. For those in the academy, you'll be able to download this as an audio to be able to listen. For those on Facebook, you can watch this later. But write down these following letters. So it creates the acronym SPARCLES. SPARCLS. Chris, I'll actually write that in the. Can you write on the chat, mate? Have you got the? Yeah, do you want to just write that down on there? But essentially, we have at ISR what we call the seven tools. There you go. Chris is writing it down now. So SPARCLS, sparkles. So what we're going to do, we're just going to, over the course of the next 20 minutes, we're just going to sort of summarize what we've been covering over the course of the last 7 weeks. Obviously, each one we went into a 30-minute, sort of a deeper discussion, but we'll keep it, we'll keep it a bit sort of generic, just so for everyone. But Chris, do you want to start with S?
Absolutely. And before we jump into it, any questions or anything that people have got concerns or anything that we want to cover before we jump into it? Quick why in the chat and on Facebook if you can hear me as well. Quick why if we're all good to go.
That'd be good, actually. Can you hear on Facebook? Can you hear Chris? We're just testing this out, seeing if it works. Chris is heard on. Well, I'm glad you can hear on Zoom.
That's good to hear. Good to hear. All right, so jumping in then. So the S stands for scarcity. Scarcity.
Lauren's favourite tool, apparently.
Yeah. All right, we're good. So scarcity for me is one of the most powerful tools. So the reason that we use scarcity is to create urgency.
Yeah.
And give the customer a feeling of exclusivity. So we're looking to create urgency and exclusivity. Okay. Me and Rob will be giving a lot of the what's today. Obviously, as business owners, there's multiple industries in here. So when we come away, start thinking of how do I create urgency and how do I create exclusivity with my products and services? And as Rob goes through and I go through, start obviously thinking of ideas when we come off the back of this. Some ideas around that could be limitations around stock or availability.
What in the world right now is scarce? What's costing people an arm and a leg right now? Hand sanitizer is probably the big one. I saw someone post yesterday, $30 for a
off topic as well. And the one thing that Rob loves is to be interrupted, so that's why I did it. I went over to my coffee shop at the bottom. Obviously, they've closed because they're a restaurant; they can't serve, but they're doing takeaway coffees. They're actually selling toilet rolls now, 90 cents a roll. So supply and demand shows that if people need it, they'll sell it. You know, so they've obviously that's off topic, but just to limit around what the demand is at the moment. You know, how do you build that up? You know.
Yeah, and I think from any industry can create that scarcity. I think you just got to be creative in that time.
Yeah.
Our time is limited for training and whatnot. So for how can you create scarcity even in the opportunity of limited because of the uncertainty? That can be a good thing. Like actually because it's uncertain around what's going on, the availability for what you have or can provide should bring a natural level of scarcity.
And one thing around scarcity as well, just for obviously people taking notes in here as well, is something called seeding from the start. So seeding from the start, that basically means with scarcity, if you use this at your end of your presentation or when you're looking to close a transaction and somebody gives a level of resistance and you say, well, I've only got 3 limited stock available. And they say, well, you're just using that at the end of the call to get me to buy. If you use that at the start of the call, when somebody asks, for example, how are you today? If I ask Rob, how are you going? And he says, yeah, I'm doing really well, thank you. Obviously, things are flat out at the minute with people reaching out for education to obviously increase their sales at the moment. So with my limited time that I have today, Rob is then seeding that from the start. So with scarcity, don't use that as a sandbag tool or what we'd say, to use that right at the end to get the customer to purchase. If you start dropping in seeds or little one-liners in regards with limited stock or the time and things that you've got as well, that will be incredibly powerful towards the back end.
Absolutely. Andy Milne on Facebook just said, I use that scenario where while we can get stock, we can install, but for how long we don't know. Which is great. So I think
we've got that today as well. Our prices at the moment are the lower barrier of entry to the academy starts at 897 instead of 1495.
Yeah,
it's for a limited time. But again, what is limited? You know, somebody asked me today, well, how long is that sale going for, or how long is it changed? And I said, it's really difficult to give that. And again, with what I'm doing there is another area of scarcity is the tone of voice that you deliver that in. You really want to go into a secrecy tone of voice and say, well, with what's going off in the world, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? It's a limited time. How long do we know that COVID's going to be an issue in the country? But at the moment, what we're doing is helping business owners and entrepreneurs and professionals that are looking to increase their skill set and educate for a limited time. We've reduced the barrier of entry.
Yeah, I like what Ian said there about including a time frame in proposals as well. I think understanding, putting, but it's got to be a logical as well. You know, they've got to be logical reasons as to why those time frames exist. But look, we could spend an hour in scarcity, but we want to move on.
Just a quick why in the chat. Does that make sense? Does that give you ideas on how we can start building more scarcity and exclusivity? There's no better time than now, Rob, right?
That's my favorite line at the moment. There is no better time than right now. Absolutely. Hey, Mitch on Facebook. Big Bad Bobby is right. All right, so we're into Big Bad Bobby. Yeah. All right. So personalization. Personalization is the P in Sparkles. Now more than ever is the note that I put on here. But being personal, things that are relative to the individual. We covered this in quite depth a few weeks ago, and for me, the easiest way to break rapport is to unpersonalize something. I think that I think, was it this one where I tried saying the guy's name? I think that was that one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I always like trying to have a stab at people's names, especially if they are of maybe a foreign descent, or I like having a go, because it's personal. And I think when you've got the opportunity to make something personal, like whether it be handwritten envelopes, or, you know, it could be a note or a text. I mean, right now, ask yourselves the question, how many of you have reached out to your current clients, people that have, that have bought previously, and actually called them and said, we've had this discussion around text messages and emails to our network and database. I think doing that individually, I mean, Ryan was talking about doing that himself. Like, I mean, how personal is that? The company director to reach out, it actually says a lot. So for me, Ian says it's almost a full-time job reaching out. It absolutely is, but I think it's worthwhile. Your current clients are gold, because they are people who you need to look after now more than ever. So I think making things relative to that individual, personalizing. Chris, you always talk about, in the discovery, making sure that you have the right information so that you can personalize the presentation, using their language, their desires, their goals, I think is really important. So for me, being personal and personable right this minute is, it's a cracking way to retain clients and go from there. Chris, I don't know if you want to add anything on.
Yeah, just to add on to that. And Mandy, hello, I've just seen you in there. One thing that Mandy can testify, why I just said hello to Mandy Personable there as well, is that maybe as another practical, voice messages, very, very powerful. Just quick 30 seconds, and Mandy, testify it, because I did this with yourself, because you generally came across my thoughts and I just wanted to drop you a message. So just jumping into your iPhone and saying, hey Mandy, hope all is well. I just thought about you then. I hope the day's traveling well for yourself as well. If there's anything you need, just drop me a message back, and I look forward to catching up next time. Just going back to what Ian said, like, timing's so crucial. Just be effective in the time. If you can send over a voice message, or even in, your value added follow up, or your COVs, your contents of value, if you send over a business card to somebody, personalize it, send them a video, send them something that that's going to help them or their family or whatever. I think there's a lot of ways that you can be personable, with existing or with future clients too. So I just thought to add that on there.
I think it's good. And actually, just going off of what on Zoom here, nurturing comes in this category. Absolutely. Personalized nurture, something that's relevant to that individual. Like Chris said, COVs, content of value, something that person will feel relative to them. We had this discussion, and I thought, this reminded me of you, or thought I came across this, thought you might benefit. Now more than ever, sales conversations are going to, mean everything. Even now, like I say, now more than ever, I should get that tattooed on my head because I'm saying it so much, but it's, it's true. So, nurturing, being able to provide value to somebody from a personal sense, that personalized text message, that personalized voice message will go a long way. So, in a nutshell, it might take a little bit more time to personalize, but I feel it's relevant to make sure. So all right, Chris, on to we only got 10 minutes, so we're gonna have to probably do 2 minutes each one. So at 4:52 I'll cut you off or before.
Nice. Let's start getting through this, and obviously you can jump back in. So the next one, A, is for advancing. The one that I said was my favorite tool. So advancing. So this is where you take somebody to a future state.
Yeah.
There is literally no taking the mess out, Robbie. There is literally no better time to advance somebody at the current time, like 3, 6, 12 months time, when things are back to normal and businesses are booming and there's so many fresh ideas. What are you going to be doing in 12 months time? So I think looking at the reason for advancing as well is people, whoever's uncertain to make a decision at this time, whether it's financial, whether it's the timing, whatever it is, the reason why people don't make it, because they're not certain of the outcome, what they're going to go for. So as notes, what I've jotted down is people don't make decisions in a state of confusion. So people do not make decisions when they're confused.
No.
So language patterns around, and I can only relate it back to what we do as an example, but put this into your business. So if somebody's coming to increase their conversion rates by 10% and their average transaction's $2,500. So when we increase your revenue, as you're looking for in the next 3 months to 20%, and as a business, you're generating an extra $2,500 a month, in the next 3 months with that $7,500 that is extra now in the business, just for myself to get an idea on how this is going to help you, what would you do with that extra $7,500? Would you reinvest that into marketing? Would you take the family on a holiday? You probably have to stay in the same state now. Would you, like, what would you do with that additional $7,500? Now, the reason I deliver it in that way is absolute certainty. And again, uncertainty, people don't make decisions, but when they're certain, they do. So from a tone of voice, delivering that in so much certainty that there's no hesitation. You know, based on what they've said to you, the results that you're going to drive into them, in 3 months' time, the reality is going to look like this. So what are you going to do with that additional revenue, time, whatever it is, that you're sort of selling back to the client?
Awesome. Great. Again, we could do a whole hour on advancing. Maybe if you're in the academy, jump in and go through that section, or go back and watch Training Tuesdays. But we'll crack on. Reciprocity, I guess which is R. So R stands for reciprocity in our acronym. Just keeping it really simple. For me, it's about, as I said earlier, it's about keeping people accountable to what they've told you already. Right now, I'm going back through anybody who's told me that they didn't have time. Anybody who told me that they just didn't have time, I would actually say to them, well, hey, look, do you have the time right now? You mentioned to me that was one of the reasons why you couldn't move forwards with what we were looking at doing. So do you have the time at your disposal now? Or maybe a bit of a guided discovery question is, with the time that you have at your disposal now, how are you going to be spending it? Mm-hmm. So I'm going back into a previous conversation and bringing it forwards and saying, hey, you said that this was the reason why we're not doing it. Can we move forwards? Again, not having a huge amount of time to go through all of this. If you're going to use reciprocity, make sure in the tone that you're delivering it doesn't come across as patronizing or, oh, you said this, it's like that can come across as a little bit much. So just be mindful of how we're delivering reciprocity, because if it comes across as patronizing, then it's going to lose its effect, just like all of these tools, sparingly to that challenge. So we've got a question here from David. How would you overcome the money issue if they revert over to the original time objection? Sorry, would you overcome the money issue if they revert back to the original time objection? What context is that? Sorry, David. And we'll come back to that. Just clarify that question. Moving on, just again because of time, and we will answer that question. Chris, do you want to give a brief overview of what C stands for?
Yeah, perfect. So C is for consistency. So consistency. For me, consistency, obviously around results and reliability and everything else of being consistent, personable. But I think it's actually on the flip to what you've explained, Rob, around reciprocity, holding them accountable. For me, consistency is actually holding yourself accountable.
Yeah.
So I think around language, as an example, make sure that you're very consistent when you're delivering, facts, figures, third-party stories, first-party stories. You don't know who talks, so we have to make sure that we're very, very factual. If we, as an example, one of the investors that came on, Andrew Banks, in the first 60 days, their business increased their revenue by 21%. That's a fact. If they then come on and speak to Rob and they say, yeah, Andrew Banks's team went through the training and they increased their revenue by 35% in 60 days, there's a lack of consistency. So obviously what we teach is around SWISH, selling with integrity, selling honestly. So just make sure with the consistency is very reliable, and uniformity, I think is probably the right word, in successive results. So just making sure that essentially reciprocity. You're doing it yourself. You're keeping yourself consistency to the words that you're delivering to the client.
I like that uniformity, and yeah, like you say, in what you're saying, got to be consistent across, especially if you've got a team, but also if you're delivering facts and figures, then make sure you know those down pat, so that if somebody is making a decision, if they're a C personality type on the DISC profile, and they're going to go and look at the look at the statistics or the reviews, then making sure that you're consistent with that.
Can you still see me okay, Rob? We're having a beautiful sunset on the Gold Coast. Can you...
Yeah, no, you are... I was going to say you're coming through loud and clear, but you meant, can I see you, not can I hear you? But awesome. I can see you loud and clear.
That's all right. In the background, but yeah.
Have a think about Dave's question, mate, for me, and then we'll come back to it at the end. L stands for likability. So plain and simple, this comes down to trust, being likable. Comes down to rapport. So for me, likability is just those people that you just don't like. There are reasons for that, and I think it's important that we have a level of just general likability, and that comes down to how we appear, how we talk. People don't like arrogance. A little bit of humor can come across likable, but other people don't like that. We spoke about that before when we did the Training Tuesdays on likability. Not everybody likes humor. I think right now compassion and empathy is more important than ever. I did a post 2 weeks ago on LinkedIn talking about the two different types of people that I was coaching: people who were adaptable to change, and then who weren't. And in that time, we had a lot of measures, and a lot of people suddenly lost their jobs. And I was actually getting comments on there saying, well, make sure we're being empathetic. And it wasn't that I was having a lack of empathy. It was just in that short space of time, something, a lot of people lost their jobs. So you have to be very careful about what you're saying, so that people do still, respect and like you. And I think that comes down to that compassion and empathy around people's situations right now. I'm getting asked a lot of questions at the moment about should I be promoting what I'm doing, because they feel guilty somewhat around the fact that they're still working, which I find very very challenging at this time. So I think just being mindful will lend to being likable, I think, at this point in time, and just being aware of other people's situations. So Chris, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I think the likability underpins the trust. So if you're in the academy, I'd jump back in. Ryan did a session on the 4 levels of trust, I think, just from a time perspective, because we're nearly out of time for obviously today. But I think jumping in, I think likability, without a shadow of a doubt, underpins trust. So yeah, I'd jump into that.
Do you want to finish off with social verification? For those of you that are keeping score, the final S in Sparkles is social verification. And Chris, do you want to finish off, and then we'll answer Dave's question before we wrap up?
Yeah, so social verification, probably with the notes that you're taking, I'd go on two sort of sections with this as well. On one side, I'd go personal brand social verification. So looking at things on your socials, the content you're sharing, the things that you're tagging, the value that you're lending for your network, so other people can see your personal brand, so to speak. So that'll mean that you're more socially verified essentially as well. But then on the flip side to that, for business owners and people that represent the company, looking at your company brand. So things like reviews, testimonials, obviously video testimonials, results, things like that would be very powerful for social verification. So when people chuck you into Google, as most people know, you chuck ISR training into Google, we're building our social verification, but we are very happy with the position that we've got it at the moment. So we just need to make sure that we continue that train. So individually, me and Rob use our socials, make sure we're promoting the right light, hopefully on us, and making sure we're likable, but also making sure that we're lending value to the company as well. So whenever you're looking at social verification, it may come at the end of a conversation. It's not about a one transaction, one conversation close. You might say, thank you so much for the time today. What we'll do, we'll catch up in the next couple of days. I'll have a jump on your website. If you could return the favor, have a chuck in Google of who we are. Chuck me in LinkedIn, have a look at my name, Chris Blackburn, and from there you can do a bit more of I think what they call the professional stalk these days. Have a look into who we are, what we do, and why we do it.
Yeah. Like we've done sessions on third-party stories, reviews, using other customers as reasons, have gone through experiences. Right now, social verification for us is talking about customers that are still paying money for training. I think that's, talking about there are people still transacting out there. I think for everyone, that's social verification that the world isn't imploding as much as maybe people would like to think it is, or maybe wouldn't like, but they're seeing that it is, knowing that there are people out there who are still pushing forwards, who are still trying to make the best of a bad situation, will actually help people with their mindset among anything else. So yeah, first and third party stories. And like Chris said, verifying you as an individual or the company. So yeah, couldn't agree more. Chris, do you want to answer Dave's question? I've referenced it a few times. So yeah, do you want to just...
You'll have to read it out to me, Rob. I can't see the chat, unfortunately.
Oh, you can't see the chat. So it says basically, now that people who didn't have time and they don't have any money, or they're facing issues like Corona, so would you revert back to sort of trying to overcome that? So they said, okay, I couldn't afford it at the time, but now I'm facing Corona. Do you sort of reference back the old objection, or do you try to overcome the new one? I'm assuming that
again, it's going to be context around that. Maybe if we could grab, I'm sure everybody will want it, but if we could grab Dave's details and give a quick call for 10 to 15, just to really figure out exactly what the meaning is. That I think to answer the question, to give specifics, is going to be really, really hard to sort of give that. But one thing I'd say is that we still have to be empathetic, Rob, around obviously what we're doing with clients. People are going through difficult times. So with Rob going back in with his reciprocity, saying, now you've got the time, you've still got to ask highly effective questions to understand if they're in employment, if their family's doing okay, and really get an idea of where they're at, and then bring up the time objection and say, now you've got a little bit more time. Our program's designed to work 10 minutes a day, and it's there to drive more revenue into your business. So I respect you've got a bit more time now. So we can actually move forward with that if you're comfortable too as well.
I think that's a good, I think you can apply. I mean, bearing in mind we have a 4-step, it's a good segue actually, David. We've got a 4-step process to overcome objections, which is actually what our next series is going to be on. So for the next 4 weeks, we're going to be going through our 4-step objection handling technique, which is ARIO, ARIO. We're going to go through each step individually over the 4 weeks, culminating with a webinar from Ryan that's going to be doing on objection handling, how to be sort of forward thinking and try to overcome them before they even have a problem, or sort of bring that problem to the forefront. So over the course of the next 4 weeks, we're going to be doing that. So stay tuned for that, David. Come jump in next week, or like Chris said, just reach out on Facebook. And just chuck your details in, and someone will try to help you with that. So, that's time up. We're 4 minutes over. So, Chris, do you want to sort of wrap up for me?
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you for taking the time aside, obviously, to jump in tonight. That's Sparkle. So that's going through our 7 tools of influence as well. Me and Rob, this is our first time going through Training Tuesday for the last few weeks. We thoroughly have enjoyed it. Thank you for people that keep joining as well. It is much appreciated as well. One thing we'd love to offer and really ask for from people inside here tonight as well, as a business, we are looking to help people through this process. Yeah. We understand that there's a lot of things going off in the world. So anybody, and all we can do is ask, is if there's anybody out there that you believe that can benefit from personal development, education, sales, communication, whatever you've seen so far from ISR, all we're going to ask is maybe to tag or share our recorded video that we're going to put up on Facebook and YouTube tomorrow. So maybe if you could just tag somebody in there of need of motivation or something, we're more than happy to reach out, do a discovery, get an idea of who they are. And if we believe we can help, we'll try everything in our power to assist them people. So that's all we're asking for today. If you could just tag a few people in the recorded video tomorrow, from me and Rob, that would be much appreciated.
Yeah, same on Facebook here, guys. If you've got anybody that, as you've been watching, you think might benefit from having a rewatch of this, or future sessions to get a bit of motivation, or a little bit of a pump up in these uncertain times, we're going to do our very best to continue to shine a little bit of light in what is it's essentially a little bit of a dark time, and we're going to try and do our very best for that. So to answer the question on there about the event, an email would have gone out. Anyone who's purchased a ticket to our event, just jump in and search your emails for the about the SWISH Summit. There's been some information released around that due to obviously COVID-19. And thanks again for everybody's time on here. That's it for Training Tuesdays this week. We'll look forward to seeing you all next week when we cover start our 4-step objection handling sessions. So really, thanks for your time, everyone. Chris, it's a pleasure to run through it with you. Thanks to everyone that's attended, and we'll look forward to seeing you all again soon. Take care.
Thank you for everybody taking your time today to watch Training Tuesdays. Apologies that we weren't together as we normally are, but we'll be back next Tuesday at the same time, same place.
For social verification. See you there.